Turnkey with Morgan Francis, sponsored by Integrity Roofing.
Welcome into Turnkey on Queen City News Plus, your go-to show for everything real estate. We talk about the latest market trends, do's and don'ts of the industry, and provide expert advice on navigating this dynamic landscape that we call home. Today, we're hopping on a plane. We're going to Denver, Colorado to talk with a dear friend of mine. I've known Hannah Taylor for, 15 years. We were sorority sisters in college together, and you're in real estate in Denver.
I am. Yeah, it's been a long time. Nice to see you.
Good to see you too. It's fun that we can kind of have this marriage of the two professions here, and it's always better having a friend come on the show because it's just fun, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's kind of ironic. We both started our college careers in broadcast journalism, and now we kind of are branching into the real estate world.
Yeah.
So it's fun to see both of our paths.
So let's jump right into then how you got into real estate, because as you mentioned, you were broadcast journalism originally. And I think when you started working, you weren't in real estate. You had like a 9 to 5, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I started my career in marketing actually, and was, just noticing that as hard as I tried and as hard as I worked, there was just a glass ceiling effect. And I'm definitely somebody who's got the hustle, and I could not wait to find an opportunity that would allow me to grow my income, like with a straight correlation to how hard I was working. And so, in 2019, I got this great idea to buy a house. And I was going to house hack, which means I was going to rent out some of the rooms of the house hack or of the home, so that I could lower my cost of living and start saving and start investing in real estate. And it ended up that I closed on that house on lockdown day for COVID. So
Right.
It was
perfect timing. No concerns whatsoever.
Yeah, it was probably the scariest, riskiest thing I've ever done. And as you can imagine, as a first-time home buyer and knowing, okay, I have to find tenants to help me pay down my mortgage. Otherwise, I'm not going to be able to afford it. There's a lot of added pressure there. But, we all know what happened after COVID, how housing prices just completely inflated. And all of a sudden, I had this home. I successfully did rent out the rooms. And now I had equity built into the home. And I thought to myself, well, this is the smartest thing I've ever done for myself. How can I replicate this? And how can I tell everyone else about this? Because everybody needs to know this is an incredible thing. And this is a great way for me to, I wasn't ready yet at that time to quit my 9 to 5, but to start building for my future. And then, fast forward 2 years, I got my real estate license, and I just said, this is exactly what I want to teach and what I want to share with my community and my sphere, and just help people get established in real estate investing as much as I can, because this, I think, is a great way to build generational wealth.
I love how you said I got my real estate license so casually, when me as your friend, I know that you don't just have one real estate license. You have like a lot of them, because you're such a hustler in every possible way, right? You're like, I'm going to house hack. I'm going to get my real estate license. But you went and got a lot of real estate licenses, right?
I did, yeah. For a while there, I was avoiding the independent contractor work of being a realtor. I was terrified of going out on my own. And so what I was doing instead is I was finding real estate investors to work for. And so for a while, I was working for a big commercial real estate investor that was buying long-term rentals in 10 states. And so he said to me, I want you to be my exclusive agent doing all the buying in these 10 states. So go ahead, get your license in these 10 states, and we'll just start buying high quantities of properties in each state. And so, at one point I was licensed in 10 states, and that was, a solid year of me doing education, taking tests, doing paperwork to get all those licenses. But it was definitely a good learning experience to see how real estate differs in a number of different markets.
Well, and those tests are not easy. I know in North Carolina, I know someone who failed like 6 times before they finally got their real estate license. They're tough tests to take.
They are. I will say, and this is like my one claim to fame, because I'm not somebody who retains knowledge for a very long time, but I am someone who can cram for a test.
Yeah.
And I never once failed a test. So that was great. I was like,
that is impressive.
One and done. I don't want to have to redo this. I'm just going to cram as hard as I can. And, if you ask me today, how they assess taxes in New Mexico, I probably wouldn't be able to tell you.
But for a moment in time, you could.
For one moment in time, I could. Exactly. Yeah.
Well, I love that you want to share your knowledge because that's what you do now is you help people who are looking to get into the game, right? So this is video from one of your sessions that you hosted kind of educating people on how to invest. I'm curious what they ask you. Is there like a number one burning question that people want to know before they get into investing in real estate?
A lot of people want to know where.
Mm.
And I think the number one question I get asked is like, where is a good area to invest? And I truly think that's like somebody asking you, what type of car should I buy? Right? The answer is so
Right.
dependent on how are you going to use that car? Where are you driving it? Are you driving it in the Colorado mountains or are you driving it on the beach?
Mm-hmm.
And so the answer to that really comes from within. And I think a lot of people just want that, give me the quick, hot and dirty, where do I go to look for a property so that I can go search for it on my own? And they think they can go it alone. And that's exactly what I try to teach within my seminars and sessions is it's not always about trying to do this on your own, right? There are so many people that can give you the resources or the blueprints to be successful in real estate investing. Lean into them, right? A lot of the times their services may not cost you a thing, but they're going to be able to help you identify what your goals are, to find that property that matches your goals, whether that's cash flow, whether that's appreciation gain, whether that's tax benefits, whether that's personal use. There's a lot of different reasons that somebody wants to invest in real estate, and people have massively different budgets.
Mm-hmm.
And so finding a location really requires you to first identify, what goal am I trying to achieve here? What do I want long term out of this investment? Because I think any investment, whether it's short term or long term buy and holds, you really need to start thinking about it as a long term play. And then we can kind of back in based on your budget and identify what areas would make the most sense for you. So a lot of people just want to get, I think they see that investing in real estate is a marathon, and identifying the property is, they think it's mile 1. But really, I think that comes at like mile 15. So you really have a lot of steps to take before you jump right into that, where to invest question.
Do you feel like Denver, like your market and the surrounding area, do you feel like, and I know you mentioned it depends on the investor, right, and what their goals are, but is it like a more cash flow market, or is it long-term appreciation? Is there something that you would suggest is a better game plan for that area, or do you think it just really depends on the objectives of the investor?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question. It is really hard to cash flow in Colorado if you're only looking to do a long-term rental.
Mm-hmm.
There are some areas, but those are going to be less affluent locations of the state. And so what I think the sweet spot in Colorado is really those people looking for marginal cash flow, but higher appreciation. I think Denver as a market has been very resilient in a lot of the economic downturns that we've seen in history. So in 2008, Denver was one of the cities that first bounced back, right? And I think as we're seeing kind of this ebb and flow right now, we're pretty much at a stable appreciation over the last couple of years, but I do envision that will continue to go up. I also service the mountain communities, and I think, anything in the ski resort areas, those are going to see high appreciation continually, no matter what the market is doing, because that draws in a very wealthy type of buyer. So if you are, investing anywhere in the mountains, I think you're going to have high appreciation.
Right.
If you're investing in Denver, I think you're going to have high security. But the strategy that makes the most sense here is short-term rentals.
Okay.
Long-term rentals, as I mentioned, don't really cash flow. Midterm, we have somewhat of a market, but I would say it's not the best market in the country. But from a short-term rental perspective, we can absolutely make somebody cash flow in a number of different areas, whether that's in a metropolitan area or in the mountains.
So what would you say to someone who's interested in doing short-term rental but doesn't know if they have the time? Because that's a time commitment. I think I've actually seen, did you at one point have short-term rentals and we're dealing with, I don't know if there was like a water leak at some point, or there's always something going on, right?
Always something. Yeah, that's part of real estate investing, right? I do have one long-term rental. That is my baby. It will, that was that house I bought in 2020, and it is turnkey, and there's no problems, and long-term tenants are quiet. Life is good. I have 2 short-term rentals. And yes, I will say, people say, oh, I want passive income. short-term rental investing is not necessarily passive. It is very time intensive, especially when you're setting the property up.
Mm-hmm.
But once you have everything set up, it is generally speaking relatively automated. I have a lot of softwares and systems that I use to basically automate my messaging, automate my cleaner. My cleaner knows when to come in and clean the house. I automatically pay her. The only time that I really have to step in to do any of the management is if a guest wants early check-in, late checkout, or if there's a problem at the property. And sometimes it's really just nice, cordial messages between the guests where they're saying, thank you so much. We've had a great time. And I just message them back. And so it really doesn't take more than an hour combined or cumulative within my week to manage my short-term rental properties. I would say the most time intensive thing is when there might be a problem, right? A water leak that maybe happens once every 5 years, or, something along those lines. But I have a lot of systems in place, and that's something I teach all of my clients is to create those systems and make everything as automated as you can. So if there is a crisis, if there is an emergency, you have a fallback plan.
Mm-hmm.
I think, the number one thing with short-term rentals is people not understanding how to use the door codes. And if that's the case, I just have a spare key that's in a traditional lockbox for those people that can't understand how to use electronic door locks. Right.
And you don't want them calling you every time they can't get in the door because they don't get how it works. I never would have thought of that, but that can be so time consuming.
Exactly. Yeah. And so that's kind of my bread and butter now is helping people buy and sell short-term rental properties and teaching them how to do these things and make it like almost like a life hack where they don't have to spend as much time doing the management and operations, because there is a tremendous tax benefit for people that are managing their own properties that you can't get with any other type of short-term or any other type of real estate investing. So people do want to manage their own, but usually my clients are high W-2 income earners, or they're lawyers or doctors, and they don't have the time to spend on another job. And so I try to educate them on how to make it as efficient as possible so that they can manage this, this investing asset in their life.
Obviously, they're going to hopefully have a real estate agent to help them through the process of identifying a property. But what should they expect out of that relationship and kind of the course of identifying a property? Do you look at, cap rate, gross rent multiplier? Like, what tools do you utilize as an agent to help your client understand, yeah, this might seem like a great property, but not worth it. This one is. How do you hash that out with your client?
That's a great question. I think that the first thing I want to mention is just having an agent that understands legislation. Because there are a lot of agents that could say, yes, I can show you I can help you buy a short-term rental property. But if they don't understand the legislation from a county level, from a city level, from an HOA level, and you buy a property where you actually can't acquire a short-term rental license, you're in trouble. And that happens a lot.
The agent's in trouble too.
Oh, absolutely. And so the first thing I would say to anybody looking to get into short-term rental investing is find yourself a knowledgeable agent that understands the legislation in your entire state that you're going to be shopping. Because if I was an agent and I just said, oh yeah, I know the legislation in Denver, well, that doesn't necessarily help you if your goals are appreciation. Because I really think if your goals are appreciation, you should be looking in the mountains rather than Denver. Mm-hmm. So I'm educated on the entire state of Colorado. And then when it comes to anticipating income, we utilize resources online. There's a tool called AirDNA, which is basically an aggregate of all the data from Airbnb as well as VRBO. And it puts forth an estimated revenue amount of that property. Mm-hmm. And so from an agent, what I do for my clients is when we're assessing a property, I put together a pro forma. This pro forma will show essentially all of the monthly expenses that you'll have. And I go down to the nitty gritty, including your subscriptions to your Ring camera, your lawn maintenance, your snow removal, everything of that nature. Then we take a look at your purchasing costs, what your monthly mortgage payment is going to be, your taxes, your insurance, your CapEx, etc. And then we take a look at AirDNA, and we also use other resources. There's something called Rabu. There's a number of different websites that can project Airbnb income. Mm-hmm. Not to get too in the weeds, but a lot of these
Get in the weeds. I love it. Get in the weeds.
If you just plug in the address of the property typically Airbnb is going to, or AirDNA is going to give you a projection of income for that 50th percentile. They're going to say, you're not better than average. You're not less than average. Here you are. This is what you can do if you're right in the middle. But I train my clients to be the top 10%. I give them the resources for the design. I give them the resources for the photography. I show them what they need to do from an amenity standpoint because I really want them to be maximizing the return on this property.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a way you can go in and you look more, at the overall market and you say, okay, I'm looking at a 5-bedroom house in Arvada, Colorado. Let me also hone in and look at other 5-bedroom homes. Let's take a look at the top performers and see what they've done from a design and amenity standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
And if I do something similar, I can expect to probably bring in the income that they bring in. So then I pull in that data into the pro forma. And with that, it spits out essentially what your annual cash flow would be. But then we also take a look at all of the income factors that you can get from a short-term rental property. So that's principal pay down, that's your
Mm-hmm.
tax benefits, likely bonus depreciation tax benefit. That's that big one I keep referring to. And then you've got appreciation as well. So when you add all of those up, you can look at the total financial benefit from year 1, year 5, and year 10. And I think that's a great way to identify, is my return of 1 hour a week worth a financial return of $500,000 in 10 years?
Mm-hmm.
Some people might say yes, some people might say no. And that's how we evaluate, okay, is this the right one for you, or do we need to find one with better returns?
Do you feel like when you go through all this stuff with your clients that their wheels are just spinning and they're like digesting everything you're saying, but it's a lot for someone to take in who isn't like fully informed on the industry?
100%. And that's why, I try to provide as many resources as I can. My brokerage has a course that we actually give all of our clients. And it's just 8-minute video clips on each topic of short-term rental investing that walks you through from start to finish how to be an investor.
Fantastic.
That way, they have me as a resource anytime. When we're shopping for houses, I'm educating. When we're on the phone, I'm educating. As we're under contract, I'm educating. But then they also have these videos that they can refer back to at any time. And that just helps them kind of stay aware of everything. And, they feel a little bit more secure knowing I don't have to remember everything Hannah's saying right now.
But they should. It's all great information. So you mentioned depreciation a couple of times. For people who don't understand like what that is and how it works, can you kind of explain that, like how to depreciate your assets?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll try to make this quick too. When you buy a house, the government takes a look at your house and says it has a lifespan of 29 and a half years. So every year you can deduct 1/29th and a half of the value of your home from your income to basically save you some money on taxes. But when you have a short-term rental property, and again, I'm not a CPA, so definitely if you're looking
Yes,
to
important to always mention that.
disclaimer, consult your CPA. But if you are proving material participation in the short-term rental by saying, yes, I'm the person who spent the most time on this investment this year, that means essentially to the government that you're running a commercial business. And so they tax it as such. And so when you take a look at your home, let's say for quick example, you buy $1 million property in Colorado. When you deduct the land price, the land is about $200,000. So that means that your home itself is $800,000. If you're doing straight line depreciation, you can only deduct 1/29th and a half of that $800,000. But if you have a short-term rental property, what you can do is you can take the value of any asset within that home that has a 5, I believe it's 7, somebody's going to correct me on this, or 10-year lifespan. Might be 5, 10, or 15. I always forget which ones it is, but there's 3 buckets of lifespans, with the exception of the full term lifespan, which would be like your foundation, your structure, etc. The value of all those assets you can pull forward into year 1 and use that as a deduction against your W-2. So again, using that $800,000 example, typically you can deduct about 25 to 40% of that $800,000 in year 1, meaning that you can take about a $200,000 to $300,000 deduction against your W-2 income.
Which is huge. Every little bit adds up.
Yeah. I mean, if somebody is making $300,000, that means they get a full refund for all of their taxes that they paid to the government that entire year. Or if they're making less than a 300,000, they can roll over anything that's left over into year 2. And so while short-term rentals have a really high barrier to entry from a cost perspective, because not only do you have to buy the home, but you have to furnish it and you have to add amenities in order to drive up that income.
Right, because everyone wants an Instagrammable place to stay on their vacation, right? And I don't know if you guys utilize like AI to market the property as well, but that was something another guest on Turnkey had mentioned with their Airbnb properties is you really have to tap into the algorithm also.
100%. You know, how many times do we all look for like vacation homes for a group of friends, and the first filter we put on is hot tub,
Yeah.
right? It's a barrier to enter in Colorado. If you're going to have a short-term rental, you have to have a hot tub. And now people are getting a little bit more competitive. We're seeing saunas, we're seeing game rooms, we're seeing mini putt-putt in the
Turning
backyard.
into a spa.
It's yeah, and I mean Colorado, Colorado isn't to the level that like Nashville or Orlando is yet from the Airbnb design and furnishing standpoint, but you do have to invest in it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I think this bonus depreciation is a great way to get back a lot of that initial investment that you spent in that first year so that you can get a lot of those returns back and essentially start year 2 almost at break even.
This episode has gone by way too quickly.
They always feel.
We do have a couple more minutes. I would love to hear your like best and worst stories of like experiences in real estate, whether that's you personally or as an agent, something you experienced that really warmed your heart to see, you know, a client succeed, and then maybe kind of one of those buyer beware type of stories.
Yeah, I think my best story, 2 people come to mind, and actually they're best friends, but they are nurses and mothers. And they were, you know, working nursing together, and they're just like, there's got to be, the healthcare industry is so tough. There's got to be something else out there.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them came to me and just said, you know, I've got 2 kids. I want to buy a short-term rental so that that can be their college fund, and I don't have to always be working. And we found her an absolutely incredible mountain house that is doing far beyond what we originally projected for income. And she's as happy as a clam. But then when she referred me to her best friend, who said, you know, my family's always lived in poverty. I've never been able to break this cycle. And this is exactly what I think I need to do to break this cycle of my family consistently having to, you know, pinch pennies and, you know, scrape at the bottom of the barrel for food every single week. And when I literally get the chills thinking about her, because that's why I started too, you know, is just to break this cycle of just struggling for financial benefit and security. And so for me, like that's my favorite type of client, is that person who understands the why so deeply that they absolutely will not fail. It's not a choice.
The why is everything. That's everything. All right, real quick, your least favorite story.
Oh, this might be my own, honestly. My first ever real estate transaction I did on my own. I had no guidance. I had no idea what I was doing. And this just goes to saying you need to have an experienced agent that understands her stuff. I bought in a really, really awful HOA community. And I've just seen the value of my home go down about $50,000 because of neglect and maintenance and things like that over the last 4 years. So I'm still holding it. It is currently operating as an Airbnb, and I am cash flowing. So at the end of the day, you know, even if I do lose money when I resell, I have a bank of income that I've made from the short-term rental income. So I'm trying to make a terrible story into a lukewarm story and walk away happy.
You know what, though? Your memory of purchasing your first property is, I mean, you're never going to forget that. And if you bought right around the same time that I did, I'm assuming you probably signed the paperwork, like maybe on the back of someone's car outside. That's what I know. That's what I did. And I'm like, okay, we're not even going into an office or anything. It's just me and you. All right, here we go.
I wanted to celebrate with you. It was the most anticlimactic biggest moment of my life. Never forget.
It is what it is. We all went through it. My friend Hannah, I miss you so much, and I appreciate you coming on our show and providing just a lot of really valuable advice for people who might be interested in, diving headfirst into the investment side of real estate. Where can people find you?
Yeah. They can send me an email. It's hannah@thegoodneighbors.com. I'm also on Instagram as Invest Her Hannah. And yeah, I'm in the Denver market under Good Neighbor Realty. So feel free to look me up anytime.
Thank you, Hannah. Love you.
Yes.
Thank
Love
you so
you
much
too.
to everyone else
Check it
out.
out.
Yeah, thank you so much to everyone else out there who's watched this episode of Turnkey. We will see you next time.
Queen City News Plus. Just search Queen City News on your smart TV's app store.